talking about product management and product portfolio management in general. And so we talked last week about innovation and new product development, and that's an entire field in and of itself, but as is product management and portfolio management. And so when we talk about this in marketing, the way we think about products are in the sense of cash flows a lot of times. And I don't know that everybody thinks of it this way, but I feel like it is a tractable way to talk about product development and managing products within an organization. This whole cash flow concept. So think about a portfolio of investments where you put money in and you get cash flows and money out of those investments. Products behave in a similar fashion. So we develop products, we invest in products, we advertise products, we put a lot of money into the whole selling of products, and our reward is sales, right? Cash flows that come in as a result of selling those products. And if you'll recall last week, we had this idea of creating a product, which took time. We called that cycle time. But the idea of having a concept for a new product, seeing it all the way through the development stage until you launch it, are periods of investment where you're putting money into the new idea, you launch the product, and at that point you start seeing revenue come in to help offset the costs that you've already incurred, and also help pay for the new promotion and the new marketing efforts that you're conducting for that product. So let's think then, if you're an investor, I don't know how many of you invest, if you're an investor, or if you think about putting money in different places that are going to earn you a return, it'd be pretty rare that a person or a company would have just a single investment, right? Right? We want to diversify our portfolio. We want to spread risk, right, around, so that we don't have a few very risky investments. We want to spread that portfolio around. So we do the same thing with products. And so that's what much of tonight will focus on. I would lift your spirits. Yourself if you want, or candy. Halloween's next week. Candy. Right? So I don't eat any of it. So it'll be all yours if you want it, or whatever. So or to our office tomorrow during. Okay. You fine?
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay. All right. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about, just to jump right in here, we'll talk about line mixes and line strategies a little bit, just to kind of get ourselves going, and then we'll talk about a few specific examples, followed by portfolio strategies and just some ideas that we work on a lot in marketing as we think about products. So, So just to kind of get this kind of go, we're going to look at a couple examples, and some of these examples, there's a lot going on some of these slides, I get that, so we just have to kind of pick through these a little. This is some graphical depictions of Intel processor product launches over a period of time, and it kind of goes backwards, and it's kind of a weird picture again, but and think about like the early 80s, mid-80s, early 90s, speed in which computers operated were and still are a function of their processing speed is important. And the more complicated the job the computer has to do, and the more data and information it has to synthesize, the slower it gets. So a fast means faster operation of computers and more capability to handle data. So you can imagine over time the need interest of faster processors would accelerate, right? So early 80s, small computers, but as computers grew, processing speed needed to as well. So Intel, the processor company, over years has introduced new and various products that increase the speed of processing to larger and larger markets. And so here, if we just kind of looked at the early 90s and the late 90s, the mid 2000s, we think about the Pentium processor coming out. And this is sort of one of these demand curves that you see in econ, which we use a lot in marketing as well to express the relationship between sales and price. They're negatively related, right? You raise your price, your demand will typically go down, just the way the curve would look. It'd be a negative sloping curve. So in this case, we've got this one Pentium processor, and then they've added additional processors to their portfolio of products that they offered, or their product lines, and each successive one they offered, the next two anyways, in the late 90s and early 2000s, performed better, but were also more expensive. And so the idea is, well, if it's more expensive, it's a smaller market that would probably want the product, be willing to pay for the product. And so you kind of cap out. And you'll see companies do this, where they'll offer, and the next version will be a little bit more sophisticated, and so on and so forth. And we'll kind of talk about this a little bit as we move forward. One thing that they did, though, max out in terms of your market space. Like, you can only continue to add like expensive versions of your product so much until the market just gets exhausted or penetrated, and or competitors come in and start undercutting your profit or your product space by offering lesser expensive products. And so as a result, they kind of took this idea and in one point here, they added the Celeron, which is actually kind of a lesser performing product, but at a lower price point. Okay, so kind of think about just this, kind of you can add products, bring products out that will reach and sort of tap into demand at different points, at different price points, but also among different types of consumers. So if you can think about, like, early on, the computer market was for big companies, or a very, very small niche of home computer users at home, very, very small. As those populations grew, as smaller and smaller companies demanded more products, and as more people in the home environment demanded more computer products, processors were in greater demand, but also smaller companies couldn't afford big, huge mainframes that occupied whole buildings, and individual consumers at home in mass were not willing to spend the money that original niche home-based computer buyer would spend. So to reach those markets, prices have to come down. They have to be more available. Now, again, the average home owner who's buying a computer, in the second and third stages of the product life cycle, they're probably willing to sacrifice the speed. It doesn't have to be the best. It doesn't have to be the fastest. They just need a lower price point. So the Celeron fits that piece. Okay, so just kind of bear in mind as we look at some of these examples, just kind of think about how companies might launch products or product extensions to satisfy kind of competitive pressures, also kind of growth concerns, growth pressures. Every time you add a new product, it brings in sales and revenue, so you grow. Market niches and market spaces that would otherwise not have an option for them. We see in the handheld power tool space in this example, there are three different brands listed: Black & Decker, DeWalt, and up top, Craftsman. Black & Decker has a lot of ownership rights to these brands, So one company might produce more or less the same product under, in this case, 3 different branded names. And by doing so, they'll set different price points across these different product lines. And so the Black & Decker price point is going to be kind of down below here. So the price, if you look at the simple price across performance and how well it performs, and in this case, that's kind of this proxy of voltage and how strong, powerful it is, right? The Black & Decker price point is a bit lower, and then at the same time, though, DeWalt, the company, offers a couple other brands or offers products under different brand labels. Under the Craftsman brand at Sears, which isn't anymore Sears, right? What happened to them? But DeWalt as well, and you can kind of see how so the DeWalt brand is very likely intended for a different type of consumer or market segment than the Black & Decker brand. If you think about Black & Decker and you think about the perception of its quality in general, compared to DeWalt, you would think of it as a lesser brand, a brand that's just not quite as good, quite frankly. And so the market segment that's more value conscious will very likely look to this brand. Whereas if again the person who's a professional, maybe a contractor, wants to upgrade their equipment, wants a new power tool, they may go to DeWalt because of its not only perceived quality, but also but also here in the parentheses, overall performance. So this is data that's been collected otherwise on a rating of 0 to 100, actually performs better, right? Now the irony here is you get some categories like the DeWalt that's right here, and the Sears, the Craftsman that perform at the 30 and 35. You also have Black & Decker products that basically perform the same, right, but are priced lower. So if you're the savvy consumer and you don't really care about brand name, you'd buy the Black & Decker that performs as well as the DeWalt and not care about it, right? You know, that's the idea. And this is one of the challenges that we have. Sometimes there are market overlays. So you might get the contractor or who's doing more work who wants this, but they're cheap. So they go down here and they buy one of these. They're price conscious. So that's say that, right? And they buy one down here. It's not intended for this product's the one that's perceptually placed and intended for that contractor, but they do something different and they buy down here. Okay, now here's the thing though, again, think about managing all these products simultaneously. You know, we can add products. If DeWalt wanted to add products under that brand name, they could add products that would fill in. We could add different products at different price points along here, right? And then, but at the same time, they could add one here. They could actually add another brand probably, and maybe something that performs on a line somewhere down here. And maybe they could sell that brand at, I don't know, Walmart or at a discount store someplace, right? They might not want the Black & Decker name on it. They certainly would want the DeWalt name on it. But they could create a new name, right? A new brand. We talked about this idea of family of brands and different branding strategies, house of brands. So they could actually start a new line. And here's the deal, the dirty little secret is those power tools are very likely coming off of the same production line, right? From an operations standpoint and an efficiency of production standpoint, we're getting the supplies from the same suppliers. It's probably, coming in and out of the same factory. We're just slapping a different label on it at the end, right?
Is it really? It's the exact same otherwise?
Well, I don't know. In some cases, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a great question, and if you ponder it a little bit. But you think about, now, there may be some supply differences, but let's think about brand, like store branded products. You go to any like store, larger chain grocery stores or discount stores, or even not discount stores, but if you go to Target, I think their brand is Archer. Is it Archer Foods? Maybe that might be one of their brands that Target uses, if I remember correctly. I might be wrong. But you go to buy, I don't know, any one of those their branded products under the Archer name. It could be cheese. Well, who produces their cheese for them? They don't. They go to the local creamery. The local creamery produces cheese. That cheese they're wrapping in the Archer Foods store label is the same cheese they're wrapping in other labels as well, right? Classic example is Briggs & Stratton motors and engines. So if you buy a lawnmower, chances are, yes, that lawnmower engine is a Briggs & Stratton engine. Now, that mower that you buy, it could be a yard machine mower that you're buying from Home Depot, or it could be different lawnmower brands. The engine's a Briggs & Stratton. It comes off the same assembly line as every other Briggs & Stratton, right? And so, I mean, just think about the efficiency of production. So it makes kind of sense to be able to do that. Got your name tag? All right, another example, and then we'll kind of move on from this. And this is one that's a little bit different because we're really tapping into different market segments when we look at just this illustration of different appliances that might be offered through, again, positioning and lines of General Electric, whether it's an average in-home kitchen that they're supplying at a lower price point, at a lower price point, and kind of look at these. They kind of go up at a line where we have the price, but then as we go up and we move from sort of the basic up to more fancy, kind of sophisticated, if you will, types of products. We've got the monogram. Anything that's labeled monogram is expensive. The monogram font, the monogram, that's right. So the GE's monogram edition is going to be the most expensive. And again, it's kind of like the idea of let's create products and use a product strategy to reach new markets or to differentiate our portfolio of holdings, to give us more opportunities to sell product. Let's say that in one of these categories, sales decline. Sales go down. Well, if sales go down in one category, if you have products in other market segments, those sales might be going up. And so it sort of balances out risk sometimes, and it allows you to use new products to bring you into new market spaces. Okay, good so far? Good. All right, so why do we want to get involved with this? Why do we think about this firm strategy stuff? When we talk about product strategy in general, we're talking about growth more often than not, how we're going to grow and how we're going to satisfy markets. It talks a lot about, or it speaks a lot towards the product categories, which we've looked at a lot, that we're going to be involved in. And so charting direction, charting a specific focus that we can kind of move towards or through is an important concept. What sandbox should we play in? So which category or space will we be involved in? And important question to ask, because when we ask that question, it defines our competitors very often. If we say we're going to be in this power tool space, then it identifies who those competitors will be, that will be our competitors. And it also, again, helps direct us towards that market, the market profile, the types of customers that we're going to be selling to. Okay, so charting direction. Bear with me just a second, I'm sorry. Hold on. Silly thing. Okay. Pull up the rest of those things. Sometimes when I do these, it has these timings, so it automatically goes forward. Like behind me, I'm not sure what's going on. Something's happening. Okay, so charting direction, meeting goals and objectives of the firm. Okay, so as we do the planning process, when we create that business plan for the year or marketing plan, if you want, we have target goals for sales. We have target goals for market penetration, number of customers served, and those types of things. So certainly managing our product portfolio helps accomplish those types of things. Certainly thinking of our position relative to our competitors is a reason why we want to also think about product strategy and managing these products together. I mean, just like, we bring out new products, we're also maybe bringing them out in response to something our competitor has done. We're nervous that this new startup company, Just Mayo, right, take market share. So as a result, we're going to develop our own version of the English mayonnaise, and we're going to launch that. And that will be sort of a competitive response, but we're going to use product strategy as a tool to kind of help us do that. And then finally, adapting and reacting to the market. So one of the challenges we have today, as you can imagine, is recognizing shifts and changes in consumer markets and then responding appropriately when needed to do so. And so this clearly is a response to the market as well. Competitors, the market, they change and evolve, and we, with our product selection, do so as well. All right, so let's just talk a little bit more about, when we're looking at these portfolios, when we're looking at an arrangement of products, what does that actually look like? Okay, and this is one of those activities or tools that you can do, and in fact, I would suggest anytime you're thinking about either looking at a new company, if you want to do a competitive analysis, if you're interviewing at a new company, one of the activities that is powerful to write out on a piece of paper all the different products and services they offer. And in fact, most companies, at least in the consumer product space, when you go to their website, they actually do this more often than not. They'll create their website where they list their brands or list their products in some kind of organized way, which could then be drawn out in what we call a product array or a product array chart. Okay, this chart that you're going to see, or that you see here, again, it outlines products kind of in two different dimensions. There are product lines that go up and down, and then also product, what we would call a product mix, which goes the kind of side to side, if you will. So we're going to look a little bit more at things like this, but just kind of get an idea of we can go across categories. In this case, we have kind of this casual cuisine product space that Lean Cuisine has, and then we have a different either brand or identity of products as we go across. We have something called Market Creations, so my guess is that's going to be a different branded product. So we have, it's a Lean Cuisine, but it's a different type of product. And these here, there are 9 different chicken products, 3 different tortellini, whatever, shrimp and such. So we got different products that are in here. Then we go to the spa cuisine, cafe cuisine, comfort cuisine, simple favorites, and then different dinner time cuisines. Now, is there overlap in these products? Are some of these products familiar or similar to each other across these spaces? Sure, we have chicken on all of them, right? There's pretty much, I mean, there's similarities across each one of these. So we have similar products, but we have different sort of groupings here, which we want to talk about a little bit more as we move forward. Okay, so here, takeaway from this is virtually any company that you can work for, even financial services, banks, they have products. They might be disguised as services, which is fine, but they all offer something. And we should be able to lay those somethings out in an organized way. That's a great way to learn more about what a company is all about and such. Okay, so the product mix. The product mix will be the full array, the full arrangement of products that the company might offer. Lean Cuisine, we saw a lot of products that were all laid out in one chart or one space. You could generically call that their product mix. All the things that they more or less offer. When you look at those columns, the columns of information, oftentimes they're arranged by some type of business unit. Now, this is not always the case, but sometimes this is the case, right? So if we were to go back to that chart before, we saw these different kind of types of. Each type of product should be able to function and act on its own and in its own way as a strategic business unit. This is oftentimes the way we build these types of things. It's we have different the Dr. Pepper, Schweppes, Dr. Pepper. We did that case, right? So Schweppes. Now, this is a little dated because Keurig is involved, and Coffee is now with that ownership group, or they might have spun them off, I can't really remember. But is its own, can be its own thing, right? It can function on its own as a strategic business unit. It can have its own marketing plan, it can have its own financial plan, it can have its own distribution set up if it wanted to. It can be its own thing. 7-Up simultaneously can do its own thing too, right? I mean, theoretically, it's a separate brand, it's its own thing, so it could be its own strategic business unit. The Squirt concept could be its own one as well. So very often, companies are set up just naturally by these strategic business unit concepts, and this is how oftentimes product array charts are drawn. So the products that fall under Dr. Pepper fall linearly in that space, and they function by themselves. So when we talk about strategic business units, this is not the strictest sense of the word where they are independent units, but they could be if they needed to be. And when we do these charts, when we see these charts, they don't have to be by brand. They could be by technology or by some other element that the company has available to us. FedEx used to be divided into air and ground. And the air division did, the products or packages were moved. The service relied on the technology of airplanes and air travel. And the ground division was driven, no pun intended, by ground transportation, right? And that's kind of the two separate pieces were sort of there. And that's how they were developed. Okay, but again, kind of what drives this a lot of times might be this idea then of strategic business units. We'll look at some other examples here. Last one here, we mentioned Caterpillar. Caterpillar, they used to have 3 divisions actually. But anyways, look at hold on a second. I apologize. There we go. I'm going to get up to this eventually. This example, Toyota. Again, we're going to look at brands. When we look at Toyota's brands, you think of that company, again, kind of strategically designed around its brand concept. General Motors and many of the other car manufacturers or car conglomerates, you also think of that way as well. Toyota, its own brand, its own functioning space. Toyota by itself can be its own strategic business unit. It will operate on its own. It will function on its own. It may or may not collaborate with other brands within Toyota. We have Lexus, right? The Scion brand, I think, is gone now, right? It doesn't exist any longer, right? But it used to, right? It was deleted from their portfolio. Okay. And again, kind of the mapping here shows that we can move left to right. So Scion was added at one point to introduce a small car version, and then it went away, which we'll kind of think about here in a little bit. So you can move left to right, you can grow left, you can shrink left, right, okay, so that dimension. And then as you know, we can add products depth-wise as well. So this is like a two-dimensional type of chart that grows and shrinks depending on what your strategy might be. Okay, so again, SBUs kind of function kind of on the vertical axis. When we look at the width, we think about kind of the again, that left to right, things like that, adding or deleting strategies that are there. I kind of jumped over this, not intentionally, but because I haven't had my moon pie yet, probably. But we do look at Toyota, we do look at Lexus. What would they share together?
Engine.
Excellent. What else? Chassis, their drivetrains, there's a lot of pieces and parts to the car that they might share together. Again, as the consumer, we don't always necessarily know that, right? Audi and Volkswagen, are very, you see I'm going to get them wrong, but you see an Audi, what is it, like a Q5 or something, and a Volkswagen Atlas, and they're virtually the same car. I could be wrong on the names, right? But you look at them side by side if they didn't have names on them. So there's a lot of sharing between them. And those are resources that we might think about. Kellogg's is a classic brand, a classic company. Kellogg's, we all know them for what? Cereal, absolutely. But they also own, the Kellogg's Corporation also owns like Keebler, right? Keebler snacks. The Keebler, those little elves on the TV commercials, I don't know if anybody remember them, with the little cookies and snack foods. Well, cereals and snack foods, they both use a lot of wheat and flour and a lot of production capacities that are associated with baked goods and things like that, right? So think about those resources that the company would use. So it's not a stretch then for a Kellogg's to also have products that are associated with shared ingredients or resources that they have. Automobile companies, just an example, they also share similar platforms across them. Now also, a head scratcher might be Kellogg's, who, I don't know if they still own them, but they used to own Morningstar, which was a frozen meat product company. And you're like, that does not make sense. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But think about Kellogg's ability to put products on the shelf at the retail store. So when Kellogg's goes to Walmart and says, yeah, we want to have shelf space, Kellogg's has a significant amount of power to to go to any retailer because of all the different products they have that people want. So maybe their resource restraint might be distribution. It might be the ability to get products in the store. So even though Morningstar, this meat product, frozen meat product, doesn't really match what Kellogg's initial DNA is all about, maybe they don't view themselves as a cereal or a kind of a grain-based product company. Maybe they view themselves as a distribution company at the retail level, and that's really their strength. So while on their product array it looks odd to see a frozen meat product, right, on their chart, if you think of them as a consumer good distribution company, it makes perfect sense for them to have it. Right? So this is kind of an interesting science behind some of these ideas and being able to kind of create product array charts and think about how companies function and how they use them strategically to build on other things. Another just example of a company, Textron. It was a holding company for a bunch of different high-tech products. Cessna aircraft, for instance, Bell helicopters, for instance, go-karts, golf carts, those types of things as well. And this is their portfolio. This is their corporate portfolio of holdings. Again, kind of think about these as a collection of investments that the company has put money into. Within each one of these strategic business units, which again in this case they do operate independent of each other, but they have across a series of strategic business units. Each is branded here. If you look at depth-wise, each of these strategic business units has a cadre of products, right, that they can offer. It may be we get to a point where we look at, why do we have all of these brands? Maybe we're spread too thin. Do some of these business units outperform others? Do some of these business units contradict our business ethos? Those might be some questions that you ask as a firm. I think I probably mentioned that, and you'll recall, the Clorox Corporation owns a whole bunch of companies, right? One of the companies that the Clorox Corporation bought out was Burt's Bees. Burt's Bees lip balm, Burt's Bees, right? Did anybody know anything about Burt's Bees? Anybody have any Burt's Bees? You know something.
No, I use all their stuff.
Yeah.
My mom's been using it for years.
Many people have, right? You would not associate the Clorox Corporation with Burt's Bees, would you? Right? Yeah, so that could be, that's just one of those where, again, from a branding perspective, they want to keep those brands separate. Nobody wants to know that they're associated with each other, but it helps diversify Clorox's portfolio of products. Think about tobacco. RJR and the company that owns them, which I can't remember their name. And, oh gosh, there's a conglomerate that owns a bunch of tobacco companies. And think about how important it is to be diversified in your portfolio of holdings if you own a bunch of tobacco companies, right? Because, the profitability of tobacco is there, but fewer and fewer people are using tobacco. So that market, it's shrinking. It's getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And eventually, it's probably not going to be very profitable. So if those companies aren't diversified, well, what's their future? What hope do they have to continue on? So again, this is kind of one of these ideas of kind of how we move forward. So think about that whole mixed piece and kind of these individual units. The second part of this is going to be kind of the depth. And we haven't really gone too deep into the depth of products and product lines, but it could be that you're a super specialized brand, you only operate in one product category, and and you have lots of products that you offer within that product category or product space. And if we're doing that, we're talking about kind of the up and down version here, the up and down kind of space here, or the line of the of your chart, kind of how long is it as opposed to how wide is it. Right? Those are two different dimensions, and we manage them differently. So length and of the line is kind of the next thing that we'll kind of think about. Procter & Gamble, P&G, another example company with lots of SKUs, lots of brands under their entire corporate portfolio. But at the same time, if you're the manager of one brand, then one of your responsibilities will be to manage the products within your brand, right? So in this case, we have all these different product categories that we have in household. In this space, we have Bold, Cascade, Cheer, Dawn, Dash, all these different types of detergents. And one of the big questions is, do you continue to add products within these brands, or do you delete them, or kind of how do you manage the size of those offerings, right? So look, every time we create a new product, we do new product development, right? We're managing the length of that line. But when we offer a new product, the line gets a little longer. Does that make sense? Now, from last week, though, you know that when we develop a new product, it's expensive. It's very costly to develop a new product. And a certain percentage of products fail every year, right? So even though we spend all this money, we develop new products, there's no guarantee that there'll be successes in the marketplace. And yet we've added this line of cost to the overall bottom line of the company without any future cash flows that can happen. So we've got to be very careful and sort of diligent about this idea of adding products. Okay, but with that said, there are a number of different line strategies we can engage in. Okay, one of those line strategies is called a full line strategy. Right? When we do a full line product strategy, our goal is to introduce a number of different product variations. Those product variations ideally will reach lots and lots and lots of different members of our market segment. Okay, so products where you see a lot of variation and variety and a lot of different versions, a lot of consumer packaged goods are like that. I don't know how many different varieties of moon pie there are. Probably not that many. It's probably not a full line. But if they had 30 or 40 different varieties, we'd call that a full line, right? Basically the idea. But again, temper that enthusiasm of a full line with the cost it takes to manage each new product you offer, right? So every time you offer a new product, you got to advertise it, you got to build excitement for it, awareness for it, you need to make sure it gets distributed. Oh, and also, don't forget, every time you add a new product, you run the risk of cannibalizing sales from existing products, right? So there's that. So we need to be careful about strategy. The goal of this, though, is to offer the market as much variety as possible. And if you think about, you want market share, you want to try to have a version of your product for every consumer in your market segment. The more versions of the product you have, the more satisfied the market will be, theoretically, right? So there's reason to do this. This is done often, so this is not a rare thing to do. Okay, now, if we weren't going to do a full line strategy, what we might consider doing is a limited line strategy, okay, which is basically the opposite of a full line strategy. So in a limited line, what we want to do is offer a fewer number of product versions, and the assumption is that the market is willing to be flexible. And the customer comes in and says, well, I'd really like a version of this product in coconut flavor, but they only have banana, vanilla, and chocolate. So, okay, I will choose one of those, but it's not exactly what I want. But I am willing to choose one of those. Okay, so a limited line limits the choice and availability to the consumer. But again, we kind of make this assumption that the consumer is willing to switch or willing to accept that limited offer. Right? Makes sense? Does that make sense? Okay, now when this happens a lot is when a new product, a new to the world product is introduced. Let's say I created a new product that nobody's ever seen before, and my goal is to get it out into the marketplace. And so I do that, and when I do that, I only offer one version of it. When Tesla came out, even today, Tesla, how many different versions of Tesla are there? Anybody know? Anybody know?
Like,
4.
yeah.
3, 4, yeah. There's not a lot. There's not a lot of, now you can probably customize them in a few different ways and some things like that. But at the end of the day, there's not very many types of them out there, right? And when they first came out, there weren't even that, right? There was just one. You get the one version there is, and that's it, right? Now, so new product entry, new product design, new products that are coming out there that are new to the world, or think about it this way, products that are launched that don't have any direct competitors. Again, this is that opportunity where if you bring that product out, you have the luxury of pricing it how you want because you command the market, but also offering the versions that you want to offer. As more competition comes in and they start to copy you, then you have to start creating new versions of your product, come down in price a little bit, and doing some things like that. So very limited line. Apple is another company that very often uses a very limited line strategy where, again, you look at the phones that they offer, they only offer 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever phones at a time, right? Something like that. I mean, I don't know exactly, but I was so ecstatic. This is an iPhone 10, and I got it when it first came out, which how many decades was that ago? How many years ago was that? It still works perfectly fine, so whatever. I don't know. What are they up to now? 15? Maybe I don't.
Just released 15.
Yeah, there you go. See, I'm up on it. Sell this anymore? Do they sell 10s anymore? Do they? So, but they're not going to sell very many. I mean, they're not good. They don't have a lot of variety. I mean, there are only a few versions you can buy. So that would be a limited line kind of concept. The benefit for the company, of course, is that you don't have to support lots and lots of different products. You don't have to advertise. You don't have to have a marketing plan for 40 products. If you only have 4, it kind of simplifies things a little bit. It saves you a lot of money and a lot of cost, right? So there's reasons to kind of think about and do that. Yeah.
Does it depend on the industry, like how many different variations
Yeah.
classifies a full or?
Absolutely. So like I mentioned, the whole consumer product space, you look at something like Frito-Lay, they're going to have a million different versions. And it's cheap for them to put out these versions. They already have the infrastructure to get them distributed. If they come out with 30 different new flavors of potato chip this year and 25 of them fail, it's no big deal. I mean, they'll suck that up and they'll move on and they'll be happy with the 5 that did well. Right? Now, if you're Boeing and you come out with a new plane idea and put it into production and it fails, you're out of business. You just are done, right? So yeah, I mean, it's industry specific. It can be for sure in terms of the dynamics of each industry. Okay, line stretches. So let's talk about a couple more line strategies that we can do. A line stretch is something that is very unique and kind of interesting. It deals with when we add a product, the consumer will see that new product, and we might use that new product to change the perception of our brand or change the perception of kind of who we are in some capacity. So this is called a line stretch. You You can have upward stretches and you can have downward stretches for the most part. Okay, so an upward stretch is when we create a product in our product line, but the product is a higher version of quality and or price, and we're positioning it as a better version of what we already offer. Does that make sense? So, I mean, you could kind of put in order your products most fancy to least fancy. This is a case where we're adding a product or ideas of a product that push the line upward in terms of its sophistication or its, what it is, right? How it's perceived in the marketplace. So with that, an article that's listed that's posted at Moodle this week. It's called the Super Premium Premium, and it's really a fascinating article. I hope you get a chance to read that and look at that and consider that article, because basically the idea is when you take a product category, especially is commoditized. So take a product that is kind of out there, people use, people know about, maybe there's not a lot of differentiation in it, and add to it some elements that make it special, that make it new or make it different, and attach a super premium kind of perception to it. So a high price, fancy logo, sophisticated packaging, put it in very limited spaces, do stuff like do small production runs so there's scarcity. All of those things kind of add together to make this new version of the product exclusive. And that would be something that would be captured in this super premium concept that's actually out there. In this article in particular, talks about Grey Goose. Is it Grey Goose vodka? Yeah. Yep, Grey Goose vodka. And also later in the article, again, I really hope you get a chance to read it because it's exceptional, actually. They talk about gasoline and creating super premium gasoline with like higher octane, I guess. Higher octane, higher price. Gasoline is a commodity, right? Any gas station, gasoline is gasoline. Put it in your tank, and 99.9 times out of 100 performs the same no matter where you get it, right? So why would I pay more to buy some rather than another? Well, if you get super premium, it's better octane. It has cleaning agents in it to clean your car. All of this stuff. Who knows if any of it's how factual it is or how true it is, but we might pay an extra 50 cents a gallon for that super premium as opposed to regular 87 octane right? Something like that. So think about taking a product, again, that's kind of known and adding something special to it, a new dimension to it. The vodka example, again, super interesting because of the product category and how it's produced and things like that. But they're basically engaging in an upward stretch. It's basically what's happening when they do this. They're taking a product category and they're elevating it. The other element that happens, and this is more of a theory, it's more of a psychological / marketing theory, and it kind of works like this. Let's say you have two products. Let's say you have two products, right? And there's a good product. There's a product that's sort of positioned up here and one here. So one's a little bit nicer, more expensive than the other. So you have two offerings, right? Well, you're going to get some consumers who always want to buy the best. Consumers, some percentage of your market will always buy the best. And then you've got the rest of your market that has to settle for the other, right? And so you've got sort of this split of consumers between your best and the other. Well, when you add a stretched product, when you do one of these super premiums, you're adding a product up here. So now you've got three. Well, the people who wanted to buy the best obviously switched to the best now. So you've upsold them to something greater than what was before, only because it's offered. And because of who they are, they want to do that. And then you take the whole rest of the market, and you're like, oh, now I've got two options. Like, I don't want to buy the best, but I also don't want to buy the worst, right? So a lot of people who otherwise would buy option 2, instead of staying with 2, which is now number 3, they'll actually buy that middle option. So in other words, adding a product, it's called this compromise effect, where people will see a third choice, and naturally the way it works is people move up or they move to the one that better suits the perception of the offerings out there. I mean, if there are 3 choices, you don't want to buy the worst, so you'll buy the middle, right? You don't need to know. Now, 2 weeks ago, that middle offer was actually their best, right? Basically, right? So now, I'm buying what was the best 2 weeks ago, now it's the middle. And I'm paying extra for it. I'm paying more for it. I'm willing to do that. And so it's not a trick. It's just something that we do when we do product lines. If you want to increase your revenue, add an upward shift. And it works well. Okay, downward shifts. So this is another thing that we might think about doing. Okay, a downward stretch. Now, get me a little bit careful about this. This acts as a product that you're in your product portfolio that would be of lesser quality than what you would normally offer, or perceived to be anyways, and at a lesser price. So instead of an upward stretch, we're doing a downward stretch. And again, product comes out, has a little bit less, maybe fewer features, maybe runs a little bit slower, maybe the materials aren't really what you would normally have. The price is less as well. Okay, and this is probably considered a kind of a dangerous strategy. Cadillac many years ago came out with a version of a Cadillac called the Catera, which was price pointed as a lower price point, and it really disenfranchised a lot of Cadillac buyers because there was now a Cadillac that was less expensive and didn't have the allure and the finish that they expected. It was a downward stretch. So you can suffer brand impairment. You can suffer some issues where the brand kind of takes a ding quality-wise or perception-wise by doing a downward stretch. Benefit, and the way we see it happen more often than not, is introducing a product to a new market with whom we would like to grow in the future. And so consider a high-end branded product, a premium product, like maybe a fashion brand, that would typically be pretty expensive, who may offer a low price or low entry point type of a product for maybe an up-and-coming young professional. Now, this up-and-coming young professional, they're not ready to spend thousands of dollars for the suit or the shoes or the purse or whatever it is. They will be, though, in 10 years or 5 years. So what if we offered them an opportunity to be exposed to our brand, to buy our brand at maybe a lower price point, maybe a smaller or off-category product, to get them in, to get them, I can't afford this outfit today, but I can afford this, something small, right? There you go. Something manageable, and it gets me into the brand, right? It gets me kind of involved. So that might be one approach to using a downward stretch. That might be something that we offer, capture new markets, or offer an opportunity into a new brand, or a new opportunity for new markets to come in.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If you like producing a product and there will be, like it's not perfect, there is some issue with it. Is it, and they still willing to sell it at some discount price? Is it still like the downward stretch?
It could be. It could be. Here's the thing. What companies might do. So you're saying
Like glass manufacturer, and there'll be some defective,
oh
you
yeah.
know, and then they probably sell it for like half of the price.
Yeah, that's a good question. If it's like that, do you think that they would want to do that?
Yeah, like there's like crystal pieces, you can even like see it with your eye, but they detect it, it's like, it's not perfect. It has to be perfect to be sold.
Yeah, I don't know. A couple options. Well, I don't know. It might be that might be like really, really hindering the quality of your brand long term. When we get into some of this stuff, might be identifying new markets. So not this exactly, not where you have like a defect, but say like this is one of those cases where you take a brand here or in the West or in Europe and you bring it to the US and it's positioned totally different in a totally different kind of like a value brand or an expensive. Mercedes, I've used that example before. Mercedes here is an expensive high-end luxury brand, whereas in other markets it's more of it's closer to an everyday brand than otherwise would. So doing these downward stretches in multiple markets might be something that you can do. Problem is, you spend an enormous amount of time building the reputation of your brand. You start selling it subpar, in a subpar way, like performance of it. You're dangerous. I don't know. It's kind of like buying the counterfeit stuff, right? In markets that aren't regulated. Is that something that you really want to see happen? It's a good argument. If you're a luxury brand, right, and you normally spend, it's very expensive for people to buy your product, but you want to reach new markets. Are you really that upset that there are counterfeiters out there promoting your luxury brand in these off markets? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, everyone will say yeah, but if I can get a Gucci something, on the street for half less than I'm in that brand, and next time maybe I'll buy a real one.
You're saying that the person who's going to buy one that fell off a truck is not the same person that would buy one at an actual boutique.
Oh, no, they're not.
Right? Yeah.
They're not.
I like the defective idea stuff, by the way. I think that would be cool. Label it defective.
There is, at least, I don't know if it's popular anywhere else, but there is our original outlet mall concept were for products that didn't sell from a company and factory seconds. We would call there's a term called factory seconds. I don't know if that's used ever today or anybody knows about it, but it would be the B product, the product that has slight imperfections. And you'd see it at an outlet store. They'd send those types of things to a discount outlet store. So you'd go to the Nike store and there'd be some stitching that's off or something like that. Now there used to be kind of an offering like that out there.
There isn't anymore? That's not what outlets are about? No?
Maybe still some, but I don't know. So anyways, okay. Filling out strategy. Okay, so a filling out strategy, we'll just kind of walk through a few of these more. A filling out strategy is when you have a limited line, so you only have a couple versions of your product, but you want to move towards a full line. So you start, it's just like it says, you kind of start filling in gaps of space. Here's an illustration. Now I know this is just kind of got a lot going on here, but we have some Toyota products and we have some Anheuser-Busch products, and basically they're listed in order of price, but then also product performance. And I don't know, I have no clue what product performance is for a beer. I don't know what metric that is. I have no clue, but it's the same idea where you've got sort of this relationship between performance and price. Now, this is pretty filled in, right? There are lots and lots and lots of different versions here. Imagine if there were spaces and they only had 5 or 6 different versions, but then they moved to a full line strategy and they added brands or added types of products. These are all different brands under their big portfolio, right? Here we have some different brands again. I didn't know all of these were under, this is old, so I don't know how relevant this is, but again, kind of adding products in here. This would be a full line, but if there were gaps in here, we could fill in with additional brands. Okay, so if you're moving again with more competition's coming in, greater differentiation is required in the marketplace, you might do a filling in strategy where you start adding more versions of your product to help fill out your array, your product strategy. Okay, and these are all line strategy. Okay, all right, one here then is the deletion strategy or contraction strategy. One where we take products away, where we pull products out, right? And that would be the dropping of products or a contraction. If that makes sense. Let's say a product is no longer relevant. Let's say maybe the market becomes too saturated with products, or there are too many offerings out there. Maybe it just becomes too expensive to carry all these products, and so it'd be more cost effective for us to delete a few. So maybe the market shrinks, and there's just simply not enough demand to continue with all the products that we have to offer. So we contract, or we delete, we pull products away. Okay, so these are all line strategies. Any questions? Good so far? Doing all right? All right, we're still going good. Cool. So this text, or this book, this is just a book. The Marketing Imagination. All right, so this is by Tom Levitt, and there's a reading in here. It's chapter 9, Exploit the Product Lifecycle. Really a great piece. Another way to think about, again, this idea of managing your product's longevity will come through the product lifecycle. So if you remember what the product lifecycle looks like, it's this relationship between sales over time. It looks kind of like a little bit like a, I'll draw some of it here. Kind of like a bell curve or a curve of some type, right? It kind of goes up like that, and then it continues on. I'll draw it on here. Well, so this would be sales over time. Okay, and all right, so you've kind of seen something like this before. Managing the product, managing your single product or multiple products like this over their life. When we do a product life cycle, it's usually for a product category, not an individual product, but you have to use a little imagination when we look at this from time to time. Again, this piece here, there's some good parts to here, and another piece that you'll see is cannibalizing your own products. Okay, I mentioned this word cannibalize earlier. This idea that sometimes when you introduce a new product, one of the artifacts of doing that is that sales from the new product will take away from sales from your existing product. So there's actually something called a cannibalization rate. And when we use that, we can calculate, or we can at least estimate, what we think the decline of sales will be in our original product as a result of the new product's introduction. I mean, people will come in, they'll buy the new product, but some will also switch from the old to the new. So that's cannibalization. Okay, so this idea, the headline almost says the whole thing. cannibalize your own products. If you don't, somebody else will, right? So this is like a proactive approach to managing your product line. Okay, so I've got this product out there. It's becoming old and stale, so I'm going to offer a new version of it. And slowly but surely, like Apple will do, no longer support earlier versions and eventually discontinue, right, early versions of the product. Like PlayStation, gaming systems, there's lots of products out there that do this. Right? This is not kind of new. So part of this book chapter, again, it's kind of a good little book if you want something on marketing. This talks about or life extensions, and this idea that when you look at the product life cycle, it starts out looking like this. Hey, do you guys remember the different stages of the product life cycle by any chance? There are 4 different stages that are traditionally talked about. Remember what those are?
Introduction, growth, maturity, and decline.
Perfect, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. It's not 1. I guess that's a good thing. I'm waiting for 3. All right, so where is the chart that I drew stopped at? Do you think? It's probably the start of maturity, something like that, right? There are millions and millions of products out there, and estimating the shape of this curve is not particularly difficult. It's actually relatively easy to do. Even before the product is launched or the product category exists, you can estimate this curve with a fair degree of accuracy. So let me pose this or suggest this, that if we can forecast this, or if we can in advance draw that as we think it's going to happen, then we should know when maturity is going to happen. We should know when the points of inflection will happen. We'll know the growth stage begins and ends. We'll know when decline starts, right? And kind of the end of maturity. So let me ask you this then. If you're a product manager, do you really ever want your product to reach the decline stage? Would you want, is there a reason why, if we know it's going to happen, like the sun is going to rise and the sun is going to set, products are going to hit decline. We know it's going to happen. It's happened with millions of products, and we are able to forecast it. So let's do something in advance. Let's cannibalize our product. Now, why would we cannibalize our product? I don't know about that. So iPhone 1. I don't know, was there an iPhone 1? The iPhone, I don't know, whatever one. At some point in time, we kind of say, okay, well, look, the market's becoming moderately saturated. We're having some competitive pressures coming in. Let's offer a new version of the product. And so that's, of course, what we do. And so this is like product 1. And then we launch a new product. Now, couple things. The new product doesn't start at the beginning of time. This is time period 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, right, to wherever we are. The new product will start somewhere else, and it also won't start down as low as sales. This would be 0, and these sales units would be however many units we have. I'm just putting some numbers here, right? This might be I don't know, millions of units. I don't know what it is, but it's some unit of sales. The new product number 2, it's gonna start out. Maybe we launch it here, and it's gonna do something like this. It'll start a new product life cycle. Or it really won't start a new product life cycle. That's not right. It'll extend the life of the original product life cycle. It's a better way to phrase that, right? So if I'm proactive, I kind of think ahead, then my goal is to not ever reach even the late maturity stage, or maybe even the maturity stage. I want to stay ahead of my competitors. I want to stay ahead of the market in the sense that I'm providing them something new and innovative, and I want to be able to move forward. Now, the old product we may continue to offer, so it's not like we don't necessarily have to discontinue this old product. The curve will change. It won't go like we would normally expect. It's probably going to do something like this, right? Until it's not offered anymore. But this new product, it'll capture new sales, sort of start the whole new thing again. People who bought here will again on this new product line because they're going to replace their old tech. Right? It kind of continues a cycle of purchase for the innovator for sure. Offering this original product again throughout offers the, okay, so I use the word innovator for people who buy here. People who buy at the end of the curve, who are they? Remember?
The late adopter.
Yeah, even the late adopters or the laggards, both of those two categories. The late adopters buy at the end of the maturity stage and into the decline, and then the laggards are at the very end. So 100% right. Yeah, so we still want them to buy. We don't want to be so new all the time that the laggards and the late adopters don't have something to buy. I mean, I will not probably be rushing out to buy the 15. Not that I don't want it, but I don't need it, and I could wait a while. So I'm a little bit of a late adopter, or a late majority adopter probably. That's okay. I don't mind doing that. And we do this again. So this product kind of comes here, and then we do this product version number 3, and so on and so forth. So if you kind of look at the overall sales for the category, the goal here is for it not to decline, right? Not to enter that death spiral where we want to get rid of the product. And so this is kind of a strategy. Again, Levitt talks about this. He outlines the nylon industry and how the nylon fabric industry started with parachutes and rims, like in the 40s, and then evolved with different uses and applications to reinvent itself over time. And so it's kind of an interesting example. He also offers a number of other examples too. So that's this process. That's how this can play out. Okay, so cool strategies, fun stuff. I mean, certainly, if nothing else, I think that this area of marketing in particular offers an enormous amount of creativity for you just to strategize, kind of think about, like, what should we do next? How should we, and how will this impact growth and sales and all this? The other thing it does, if you're not a marketing, if you're not really a product thing, is it should kind of tweak your interest on cash flows and how the company is bringing in money. Like, if I offer these new products and services, these are things that are going to bring money into the firm, into the organization. And so, if nothing else, it should play out on that level with you as well. Okay. Any questions? We're doing all right. Okay. A couple more ideas as we relate to this. We talked earlier about product platforms. This is another kind of twist and nuance to product line and product mix strategy. When we look at platform planning, it's not uncommon for us to create products that use technologies which can be shared across product categories or spaces. So if we have a technology that can be used to build one car, we could use the same technology, share that resource to build another type of car. And so it's a shared resource or technology that'll be used across many products. And so it's kind of like the design architect who creates not only the products themselves, but understands that product parts are interchangeable, or they could be interchangeable. And if we create the product part with enough flexibility, then we could use this product part in lots of different products, thus creating lots of different products and applications, and very importantly, sharing costs across multiple products. So, you know, if you look at that production line that produces Audis and also produces elements of Volkswagen automobiles, you know, that one production facility is getting twice as much work as it normally would. Therefore, its unit costs are going down. The expense of operating is spread out of more units, so it's more efficient, right? The overall unit cost goes down because of that, and it's a good shared resource. If I have the technology to build one product, then I don't have to recreate that technology to build a second product. If I use a platform to be able to do it, create a family of products. And I mentioned this idea of the car industry, if you will. Boeing, you know, when they build one type of plane or use one engine in one plane, they can use engines in other planes as well. Mentioned this idea of Black & Decker earlier and DeWalt, and you know, if we create one unit, one piece of one of those products, it can be shared across multiple other products as well. So think about this too when we talk about this whole product development, but also arrangement of products and future growth. I can leverage the expense that I've incurred once into many different applications, and that's just a smart thing to be able to do. Here's a short or a brief kind of illustration. Hopefully it's readable there, where up above stage one there, we have, this is the case, this is like for either a electronic recording device or maybe a sound system or something electronic, right? So we have up above these different processes that have to happen. So we have a recording system, we have a disk or a saving, like a memory system. We have an output system where the sound goes out, but then we also have a power system. And if you think about like all electronic devices, well, they all need to be powered. They all need to have a power source. So if I create that power source for one, I can also use it maybe in multiple other products. If it's something that people have to see or hear, you know, something that's going to operate that way, it will have an output process in some capacity, whether it's a screen or a speaker, you know, whatever the output is for one product, it may be duplicated and used in other products as well. So again, I create the technology for each of these processes, be able to use them in lots of different products. Cluster schematic elements, so just kind of group these together and then create an outlay here where one piece fits into another, fits into another, fits into another. So, so importantly, for instance, if I have a memory piece, a disk space, that disk and that memory component needs to integrate and fit into other components for other products. So in other words, if it uses 3 prongs to go into this piece, it has to have 3 prongs to go into all the other pieces as well. Right, so this is kind of like the design of it, kind of thinking ahead. And then, literally, you can make thousands and thousands of different products using the same interchangeable parts, conceivably, right? And that just makes sense. It makes sense to be able to do that. Right, so cool stuff as far as that goes, right? Being able to do that. Last couple of comments, last couple of things, complements and cannibals. All right, complements. Complementary items are items that tend to go together, to be purchased together. When we create product lines, we oftentimes think about, and product arrays just in general, we often think about products that more than one product at a time. Sometimes this is a consumer thing. Sometimes it's just easier for the consumer to buy multiple products at once. Sometimes, though, it's also a cost thing that we want to be able to do internally. Second concept here, so when you look at the correlation of you look at sales and you look at how frequently products are bought together, and it may be reflected in a correlation, like if it's a strong positive correlation, you might conclude that these products are bought at the same time, then that might make sense to bundle them or put them together. The opposite of that is when, as I mentioned it before, when you cannibalize sales, when one product takes sales away from another. Again, this is a strategic thing that we measure, something that we typically want to do before we launch a product. We want to understand what's happening. Again, when we do that life extension process, when we create a new generation of product to extend the product life cycle, we're doing this. We are cannibalizing on purpose our existing products, and we're doing it for greater growth down the road, and we're sacrificing the first product that's out there. Okay, a couple of illustrations. Looked at P&G earlier. Here's actually Downy softener. We have Mr. Clean, we have Tide, but we have the Downy ball, which is a little device that you use that you would put Ultra Downy in when you're doing your laundry, and it'll make your fabric great and comfortable. Use them in concert with each other, right? If we're doing a complementary type of a product. Hot dogs and buns, great complements. You can't really think of one without the other, right? There's all kinds of complementary things. There's also a bunch of pricing strategies that we'll use when we look at product complements as well. You might have saw earlier the Gillette model, where the Gillette razor handle will only accept Gillette razor blades. And so a strategy might be to give away that handle, and people will buy that complementary high margin price blade that goes on the handle, right? Think about two-part pricing like we do. Maybe you run a golf club and you let people in at a discounted dues rate, but their monthly fees and the greens fees are super high. Bring them in at one component of the pricing model, and then you make your money on another component of the pricing model. Like two-part pricing sometimes does that, and it takes advantage sometimes of these complementary items that are thought of as bundles. Okay, cannibals though happen too. This is an interesting one of those dynamics. General Motors has done it for years and years and years. Other companies do it, where you have two direct competing brands on the same shelf, the same supermarket, and one brand manager is trying to beat the other brand manager, and they work for the same company essentially, right? That's kind of seems odd to have that happen, but it certainly is there. That's one example of that should say not compliments, but rather should say cannibals in there. Or actually, no, this is a compliment because Downy is a softener. You can tell how much laundry I do. Sorry, I'm just on my space. But here's the next. So here's the cannibal, right? Where we have Era and Tide. Again, two competing brands, right? Okay. What?
You don't do your laundry, you do
The laundromat.
Oh, really?
I do dishes, I don't do laundry. Okay, we have cannibals, right? We have cannibals there. All right, so just get some interesting ideas, strategies that we can use. These bundling ideas, there's actually a huge amount of kind of like thinking that goes into bundling products, complementary products in general. We will probably talk more about this when we do pricing, because very often, when we look to price products, we look to price bundles of products together in a bundled sense. Sometimes we think of this as like a sharp shopping cart approach, where when a customer comes in your store, they rarely buy one product, right? Rarely. So what's more kind of realistic is if you think of the typical basket of goods that a customer buys. And you understand that some of the basket of goods, some of the items in there are priced at a higher margin than others. And you don't really worry too much about individual price margins. What you worry about is margins when they add together, when they come together. So think about the bundle of complementary items like in a Happy Meal or at McDonald's, right? The margin on French fries and soda is enormously high. The margin on sandwiches is much less in terms of percentage anyways, right? So maybe I can get you to buy a discounted cheeseburger, but the French fries and the soda that you buy to go with it, I'm gonna make my money on. There are gonna be huge margins on those, right? And so think about like bundling margins together, and that often drives the rationale to bundle products together. The reason why I talk about that is because they're complements, they're complementary products. When we add complementary products, we typically do it to drive sales for non-selling products and or to boost our average margin up. That's typically kind of the process and why we would want to do that. Okay, good? So far? So far, so good. How are we doing on time? Have we reached our limit yet?
34.
Are we
We've reached our
saturated?
limit.
What? Then you need another wood pile. I you with sugar and candy all night long until we can't handle it anymore. Okay, so did I forward you guys? Did you look at the Chrysler fiasco stuff? All right, let's give it 5 minutes, 10 minutes. We'll look at this. We'll introduce this and see if we can't look at this just for a second. Chrysler, Fiat. All right, what's going on? So Chrysler, let's just look at them a little bit. It would be Stellantis, right? Okay, so ownership, automobile ownership groups change and merge all the time. And these are just the way it is. There's a lot of that going on all the time. If we look at Chrysler company, over time, it has lots of additions to its product portfolios. Think about the portfolio, again, think about each brand being a strategic business unit, SBU, that could operate kind of on its own. And in the early days, the early brands, Plymouth, DeSoto, Imperial, Dodge, early days, right? Valiant, Imperial, then they acquired Jeep and Eagle in the 70s, right, or 80s, sorry. In the 80s, Jeep Eagle Chrysler, that was a big connection. There was a big lot that went on there all at the same time. Dodge has always been a part of that. Again, think about like these product platforms, the sharing of technologies, sharing of products, and things of that nature. In 82, you may or may not know, but Chrysler entered into manufacturing and production of military defense equipment. Which is not a stretch. I mean, it is a manufacturing company, and they manufacture things that have engines. They manufacture things that use a lot of metal and steel and stuff like that, technology and software. So it's not a stretch at all to have an automobile manufacturer other things like that. In the again late 90s, the merging together of Daimler Chrysler, which I don't know if you have ever heard of the Chrysler Crossfire. Probably the only and certainly the best outcome of that merger is probably the Crossfire. It was a fun little sports car, which was produced in Germany actually, and they slapped a Chrysler tag on it and sent it to the U.S. That didn't last forever, right? That certainly wasn't something that was not a marriage made in heaven. Why would Chrysler want to merge with Daimler-Benz?
They want their reputation
Good. Reputation for what?
for quality.
Excellent. Yeah. So you may or may not know, Chrysler, one of the big three U.S. automobile manufacturers, certainly through the years has suffered from a perception of poor quality, as all the U.S. manufacturers have done from time to time to time, just over time, right? So the idea that the brand brought with it a perception of fine-tuned engineering, probably not the case. And, not only perception-wise, but legitimately, by merging with Mercedes-Benz, that group then is able to share, remember this idea of platform sharing, share technological engineering, R&D research, and skills, right? So absolutely, that kind of makes sense. Now, why would Mercedes-Benz have an interest in a merger like this?
Dropping their tariffs.
Okay. Oh, that's good. I like that. I like your thinking. Right. So if you are tied into a U.S. firm, you can import with less impunity, right? So that could certainly be one reason, no doubt about that. Yeah, and how about just simply access to the U.S. market? Maybe easier access to the U.S. market, a greater footprint. Think of the dealership networks that Mercedes may have access to with a Chrysler association in the U.S., which we know dealership networks are super important in car sales, right? So that could be, a simple distribution. If you want to bring your car to this marketplace, you have to have somebody sell it. Who's going to sell it? You have to establish your own dealership network. That's extremely difficult to do. It's really, really hard to do. So that might be something that would have been a benefit to them. Anyways, this didn't work out. Life wasn't great. It didn't all seem to be the way it worked. So anyways, that relationship dissolved. In 2011, which is the point in which we start reading these articles, there's two articles, Fiat comes a-knocking. Anybody familiar with Fiat? Anybody owned a Fiat before? What's that? Yeah. Okay. All right. And it's had limited success here in the United States over the years, as you know, right? That articles talk about. It kind of introduced, it's not a very old company. It is a very old company. A very long tradition of producing automobiles, but very limited success here in the U.S. So again, we said, well, Daimler was a decade ago. Every 10 years they merge, they remerge and dissolve. Every 10 to 15 years, they just do. Okay, so this time, different ownership group, again, looking at access to the U.S. market. Why does it say in the articles that Fiat might have been interested in doing this? What's the benefit to them? Or what's going on in the U.S. market at that time? You guys have a chance to look at those articles?
The market didn't want little cars, wanted bigger cars.
They misjudged the market entirely. At least they thought that initially they did want smaller cars, but as it turns out, they didn't.
In the article, it says that it doesn't seem like a sensible purchase to make.
Do you think it's a sensible purchase to make?
I mean,
There's 5 or 6 reasons they list.
How is it Fiat? Really? Like, does it have a back seat?
it's like a smart car.
Yeah.
Like
Well-
you can fit four 4 people in there. The smart car does too. I can put my golf bag in the smart actually, so you have space.
Do you drive a smart car, the other one they mentioned?
Yeah.
Ah, very cool. And it's just 2 seats.
Bear with me just a second. See if I might have this. Rolling out. As it turns out, plunging interest in passenger cars. One thing that kind of impaired the Fiat, lack of body style variety, reputation for poor quality, and a general lack of consumers' awareness. Sounds like you have
Killing it.
all of those here. How many, I mean, there weren't very many people even in this room who just read the article and knew much about Fiat. This is what I'm hearing, right?
They're unremarkable overall.
Which means unfair a little bit. Moving forward, and we'll come back to Fiat here in just a second. Again, and this is kind of to finish the Stellantis kind of group. Fiat, Chrysler, still a team. Look to merge actually with Renault in France. But that deal was sidestepped, and so they formed a relationship with Peugeot instead, and subsequently reorganized into a new company, which again carries these brands all together, and even more so. Among their portfolio now, they also not only have Fiat, but Alfa Romeo, Maserati, and some other nice Italian brands as well. Okay, so think about Chrysler's product portfolio, kind of how this has evolved and changed over time. They've added brands, they've deleted brands, they've done all of these strategies that we've talked about, and continue to kind of evolve as the market sort of evolves itself. The illustration of these are the cars you mentioned. Kind of what do they look like? What are they? These were the early cars for into the marketplace. If you'll also recall, you might be familiar with the Mini Cooper. Anybody familiar with the Mini Cooper? Anybody seen the Italian Job? The movie? The second one? Okay.
Mini seems to do
Your
well,
job.
right?
What's that?
They do well though, don't they? I don't know, no?
I think
They're new cars, they're like under the BMW concern.
It
They're
is.
selling really good.
Yeah, I feel like they have a good reputation anyway.
Yeah,
You know, that little
It used to be a
cult
rally
following.
car.
Yeah. But size-wise, we do something like that. They've adapted a little bit. You know, the small car is a challenge. And they recognize that. So a sportier car, also attaching the Abarth, and I'm not going to name for a sports car to it. It's been something that they have tried to do. We've also got some animations here, right? But this is up through 2022, 2023. What's that? Okay, so this is it. I mean, so now Chrysler's attached to this brand, but clearly there's a whole lot of moving parts here. They're not certainly relying on this SBU in their portfolio to try to drive the train. They've actually shifted again. And there are probably other assets that they would want from Fiat. Fiat, of course, is a European brand that does well in other parts of the world. It just doesn't do well here. That's something to kind of recognize. This Cooper Minis sales over a comparable period of time have been up and down, peaking in 11 again. So if you look at when Fiat came into the space, and you look at when the Cooper Mini peaked, we have something happening there, and then it drops down from there. Seriously, I'm not joking. You people have computers. Can somebody look up when The Italian Job released, the movie, for me real quick, just as I'm babbling on it? The latest one. It would have been, I just can't remember the year.
Was 2003 the latest?
Yeah, probably. And raise your hand if you've seen that movie. Anybody? Okay. You're okay. Other than your homework is to watch that movie this weekend. Please watch it. It's a fun movie. This movie. It has the Mini Cooper in it all over the place. It's a central theme of the movie, and sales actually did take off at some point. Kind of, they think, as a result of that. I just couldn't remember what it was. That's why I asked. Right. Okay. All right, but peaking here, and then that category of car, right, kind of downward spiral. So what could Mini Cooper do today? What would you do with them as a brand to try to right this ship? Would you what are some of the options you could do?
More mini in the US or?
Yeah, in the US. Yeah. Here. We could delete the brand. We could just get rid of it. And I'm not saying get rid of it, sell it in the US. Right? We could take the product out of the market. That's an option. Certainly one of our strategies that we could use. Just thinking out what are some other things that we could do.
Change the car itself and its features to kind of adjust to the market here.
Perfect. What's one of the adjustments that we'd make? Make it big Cooper. Make it what? A big Cooper. Big Coupe version. So, thank you for saying that. They either did or were going to do a larger crossover version of the Fiat. I don't know. I don't think I put it on here as a thing. But so excellent, good. What else could they do? You mentioned, Hannah, changing, evolving markets.
Electric vehicles.
An electric vehicle. You ready? Are you ready?
Yeah.
This took another hour.
I love that.
So what could they do? What should they do moving forward? Oh, no, I don't have it. This is an electric version of the Fiat. I think it's slated to come out in 2024. Will it not? Maybe. I mean, if they're already kind of known for now, smaller vehicle, right? More economical vehicle in general, then maybe this would make sense for them to kind of come out with this. Maybe also, just thinking out loud, maybe this helps Chrysler's overall portfolio of products if they bring out a smaller, more fuel-efficient vehicle. But maybe this is a path forward for Chrysler, the corporation, now Stellantis, to kind of, their sales in the U.S., electric car sales or miles per gallon, target numbers are a collection. So a car company has to have an overall average mile per gallon target hit, over time. And so having these cars helps them do that, right? Helps Chrysler have their overall average MPG go up. So this is a good thing for them. Portfolio. Okay, so any questions? Yeah, I want you to really think about what you got managers, if you're Chrysler, what do you do moving forward? Is this a good purchase, or is this a good thing for Chrysler to end up doing? Or have they lived to regret it, or what will they do?
I'm just thinking about Tesla and all the other companies that have electric cars, and the fact that even those companies aren't beating Tesla I feel like at this point, at least I think, that's just my observations. So I just feel like, I don't know, I mean, if they were on a downward for a long time and then they come out with this, I don't know how successful it is.
What should we go again? Yeah, well, you know what, if the brand was impaired to begin with, will offering a new product, a new electric product, reinvent them and create a new image? Will it kind of bring them into this new millennium? Or will there be a halo or an effect that's carried over with this bad perception of quality and other issues? Will they be able to dig themselves out? Good question. Well worth asking, in fact. So up to now, we've talked a lot about product lines, product arrays, and oftentimes when we think about these strategies, they're individual product strategies. It's not always the case, but a lot of times when we do these conversations with product mixes and product lines, we're talking about individual products. So now what I want to do is just shift gears slightly and look at collections of products that you might manage together as a whole. And there are really two tools that you use, one of which you'll remember right away, the other you may not have ever heard of. But the one tool that you've probably heard of is the Boston Consulting Group Growth Share Matrix. And that might be like, oh, I have no idea what you're talking about, the BCG Growth Share Matrix, Boston Consulting Group. But if I told you the names of the products that we put on that matrix, you'll probably remember right away. So the names of those products that we use in that model are called cash cows, or question marks, or dogs, or stars, right? Things like that. So if those ring a bell, then that's what we're talking about, okay? And when we talk about this model, and kind of thinking about products collectively like this, we use two different dimensions, which we've looked at the market of consumers and how consumers view the product, and we looked at so market attractiveness for a product would be one dimension of that Boston Consulting Group Growth Share Matrix, and then our relative position among competitors would be the other thing. And just as an illustration, again, we'll harken back to our friends at Apple and think about these two different Apple products. Their computing product, their computer, the Macintosh or the Mac, I guess, and their watch products, the iWatch, and two very different products and two very different positions in the marketplace, right? So think about, if you would, the product life cycle, and kind of think about where personal computing is on the product life cycle. And the personal computing product category, it's going to be further along, right? It's going to be further into maturity, stage, maybe even decline, because people are using tablets and their phones and other things, right? So I don't know how many people buy personal computers, certainly desktops, well into the decline phase of the product life cycle, because laptops are there, and even laptops, I suspect, have diminished somewhat as a product category in terms of revenue sales. But smart watches, on the other hand, now probably not too early in the product life cycle, probably a little further than the iWatch is indicated there, probably in the late growth stage by now. But certainly you understand that, we have these two product categories that are, operated with this one company, and they have to manage these products differently. Like, you wouldn't promote an iWatch in the same way that you would promote a product in the mature product category. You use different strategies and different ways to kind of get people to buy that product. Okay, so now simultaneously, we look at their competitive position in those markets or in those product categories, and even though the computer has been out of the market far longer than the watch, it's much further along in the product life cycle, relative position in the computing space is extremely small. If you think about the percentage of computers that are out there, far, far, far more are non-Apple than are Apple, by vast numbers, right? Apple does not have a very strong strategic position in computing for their Macintosh products. They just never have been. In part because they have had and they use an exclusive operating system, the iOS operating system, exclusive to Apple, doesn't transfer particularly well, and other computer companies don't use it. So it has hurt them. It has hurt their growth in that product category. Just has, right? Ironically or interestingly enough, other operating systems Apple has used have done kind of this opposite thing. So if you look at like how popular phones are and watches are and the integration between those two, you know, if you have a phone, Apple phone, then the odds are if you're going to buy a smartwatch, you'll buy an Apple smartwatch, right? It's kind of this lock-in that they do. You would not buy an Android-based, I don't know what you'd call it, smartwatch if you had an Apple phone. I mean, you probably would. Odds are unlikely that you would. So the lock-in on operating hurt them in the computing space, but has actually helped them in other product categories, which is kind of interesting. So we have these two different products operated by the same company, but they share very, very different positions in the market. And as a result, if you're managing a company like this, you have to be diverse enough and nimble enough to be able to do two different marketing plans. One that would handle a product in the early stages of the life cycle with large market share, versus two, a product that is late in the product life cycle with very low market share. And we would manage those products vastly differently, just kind of in different ways. We would look to achieve different goals in sales, growth, and so on and so forth for each one of those types of products. So this kind of brings us into this idea of managing multiple products across different points in the product life cycle. And again, we're going to get back to this growth share matrix that the Boston Consulting Group put together for us. Eventually, we'll kind of come around that. But here again, kind of a different example or just another take on this idea of managing multiple products in a portfolio. We have one company or prospective company, I guess, on the left, who has a whole bunch of products that are in their product portfolios that are in the late stages or certainly not in the growth stages of product life cycles that they each have, but rather in the late ones. And so each of the little circles here represents a different product. So this would be like there's 5 different products here. So we'd actually have 5 different product life cycles. They're just shown on one. So the E product is on the earlier stage, or earlier than the rest. A and B are clearly in the decline stages of their respective product life cycles. And so you kind of think about this product, this company. This company is very likely to be risk averse. They're very likely to be a company that is comfortable with stable returns, without a lot of market turbulence. They're probably very comfortable with the status quo, not a lot going on. Right? You'll notice that they don't have any products, for instance, that are in the early stages where they're newly developed and just launched. Okay, that'd be a very risky venture for a company like this, with this type of a portfolio holding. And we look at the company on the right, and this company is probably a little bit more risk-loving or at least flexible with their portfolio. Keep in mind, products in the early stages of the product life cycle, they're extremely difficult to manage. A, they might not last. The sales might end. They might fail. The products might fail in the marketplace. So there's a risk involved in that. B, if the product does take off, if the product does do well, they're certainly going to have a whole bunch of competition, right? They're going to have a ton of competitive pressure that they're going to have to defend themselves against. They're still making the market. Products that are in this space, the market's still forming. The market isn't completely formed yet. So they have to grow the market while they're building awareness for this new product and product category that they're a part of. So if you think about the company that is willing to have products here, in fact, all of their products are in growth stages, and with A being kind of in this early maturity stage, kind of in there, very, very vastly different type of company, right? The people who run this company have different personalities than the people who run the first company. They're just different, right? And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Remember, those early gains, you may have a bunch of these, like E and D products, they both might not last. We might not be able to sustain both of them, but one of them will probably be a real winner. And I don't know, a period of time down the road, might be 3, 5, 10, 20 years from now, this E is going to be that generation's A, if that makes sense, right? I mean, that's what the goal is. The goal is to grow the product into these cash cows that will be up here, right? That's kind of the idea. This would be like a star. It may be a question mark here because we don't know what it's going to do. By the time it gets up into this area, it's a star, and then it becomes a cash cow eventually, right? So this is kind of like that collection. Now, let's say we have 40 or 50 products, or 120 or 1,000. They're all on cycle, or they're on their own space, right? And they all need to be managed appropriately as we kind of move forward with this. Right? Okay, so another kind of depiction of this, again, kind of some of this looks a little weird. I get that, the one graph to the other. Now one's on its side. The chart on the right, this would be like this idea of again, the BCG growth share matrix. If you don't know what that is or you're not familiar with it, take a look at that Principles of Marketing textbook. It'll have that in there, and you should be comfortable understanding. So it's defined by two different things. One is the market growth rate. So this market growth rate, how rapidly the market is growing. Think about how rapidly the market is growing. And again, I know this is on its side, so it looks weird. So this is the product life cycle on its side. But early stages of the product life cycle, there's a huge amount of growth, right? Introduction stage, lots and lots of growth happening. Right, the curve, the shape of that chart is taking off. So we have a corresponding high number or high rate of growth that's indicated over here on this chart over here. So if you kind of draw a line over, you see the steepness of this curve. It corresponds with a high degree of growth in the marketplace. As the curve slowly approaches zero, it flattens out in maturity, you'll see you kind of come down here and the corresponding growth rate declines as you would expect the rate of growth to do so during the maturity stage. Okay, so again, I know this looks a little wonky, sideways and all of that, but the illustration here is that when you look at products on the product life cycle, they correspond to a great degree to those types of products that you would see in that growth share matrix that BCG talks about, Boston Consulting Group. On the one axis, we have the growth rate of the product category, how rapidly consumers are buying the product in new numbers. The bottom part here, this lower portion here, can be captured in a couple different ways. Oftentimes we capture it in market share. Okay, so the original model, it would be market share at the bottom here, market growth rate on the side. Now, competitive position is just another way of saying, well, how competitive is this my product relative to our competition? And again, market share is a good way to represent that. Okay, so if you were down in this area, if this was a low competitive position and low market share, if you remember that model, that would be a dog. That would be a product in this area would be called a dog. That's what it's called. Do you guys remember that? Is that familiar to some of you? If it's not, it's okay, but that would be a refresher, something to refresh yourself on in marketing. Okay, if you have low market share or a low competitive position, but there's a lot of opportunity here, that'd be a question mark, right? That'd be a question mark on the BCG growth share matrix. It's something that we don't know what's going to happen to it. It's basically what the idea is. Over here, we have a great competitive position, and we have a lot of opportunity or growth in the market left to be had. So that's a star. Okay, so that quadrant up here is a star quadrant. We had the question mark. Some texts call it a problem child, but it's really a question mark kind of in there. And then finally, this fourth quadrant here, you have a lot of market share. You've got stable market share or competitive position, but the market has slowed, and you're into this plateau here, in mature stage. You may not have reached the decline yet. So down here in this lower area is definitely a dog in the decline area, but this would be a cash cow. That's the corresponding quadrant to that space on the product life cycle. Now again, the question is, I've got 5 products there. I need to manage all 5 of them. I can't just manage one of them, and I'm not going to manage them all the same way. Some of these that are in the early stages of the product life cycle, or the question marks and the stars in particular, those are higher risk products, right? So just think about like your investment portfolio, right? If you have a varied portfolio, some of your investments are going to be risky, right? Is that right? I don't know much about finance, but I learned that. Beta somewhere in there. There are probably a bunch of other Greek alphabet letters or whatever. But the beta's in there, the riskiness of the investment. With greater risk, however, I would expect greater potential return. It's what I'm owed, right? If I'm willing to take the risk, then I should be able to get a greater payout if the product is successful. So same thing here. The products in these areas up here, there's a lot of uncertainty, so there's greater risk in investing in those. The products that are in these lower areas, they've been around longer, there's less uncertainty in how they're going to perform. That's kind of the key here. So again, go back to your investment. If you had a stock that you were going to invest in, and you knew with certainty it was going to return 5%. Well, there's no, it's the uncertainty. It's not the return that you're worried about in part. It's the uncertainty of the return, right? And that's what's going on here. By the time products reach this part of the state of the product life cycle, we know exactly how they're going to behave. We can predict extremely well what their payout's going to be. We know how much cash flow they're going to create every single year. So there's zero uncertainty in terms of how they're going to perform. That's why I say, when we look back, we look at this company's portfolio. Those are very known quantity. There's not a lot of risk associated with the products that are on this side of the curve. These here, they've got a lot of risk in these guys and less risk in those up there. Okay, so this is kind of a fun topic, especially if, a lot of folks are like, oh, well, there's not a connection between kind of the forecasting, the risk assessments that are associated with finance, and how would they relate to kind of this product idea. Well, they actually do in quite an interesting way when we look at these portfolios. Okay, so we can talk about kind of the positioning of these, take each of these 5 products, and we could kind of describe each one of them, and think about kind of what they're doing. The size of the circle would represent maybe its proportion of sales relative to the other products that are offered there. So larger circle products represent bigger components of revenue for this company, smaller ones, smaller. E is still pretty small, right? So E, while it's an exciting product that shows a lot of potential that we clearly do well in, at this point in time, it doesn't really produce a lot of revenue for us relative to the other products that we have. Again, this is a cash cow, right? That's the idea of this product. So it's bringing in a lot of money. And one of the strategies here is if you have a cash cow bringing in a lot of money, you take your revenue from a cash cow and you use it to invest in other things. So what we're doing strategically is we're taking the money we make from this cash cow and we're putting it into D and we're putting it into E and we're putting it into these other products to build them up, right? To create, to push them along the product life cycle and to increase market share and our relative position, right? Kind of our competitive position in the marketplace. Okay, so does this I don't know if this graphically, I don't know, show me a picture and I understand it a whole lot better. And for me, this has always worked really, really well to understand the relationship products have to investment portfolios and this idea that as we, kind of think about strategy, we think about what we can do here. So where we want to go, what we want to do with each one of these different types of products vary. We look at product A. So product A is in the maturity stage. One of the things that we can do is we can create new versions of product A, like cannibalize it like we did earlier, where we extended the life of the product by creating a new version and then discontinuing the old version of it. So maybe that's something that we could do. Do a new edition, do a new version, and then discontinue the old one. We want to make sure that we defend from competitors, but importantly, we don't want our current loyal customers to defect. So doing loyalty programs, things like that would be a good thing to do. Again, we know history and, the direction that this one's going to do. We know that over time, because it's our product life cycle, we know it's kind of like you're fighting gravity in this depiction. These are all going down, once we hit maturity. So you're going up, but then once you hit maturity, there's only one place to go, and that's going to be down. So it's just kind of how you deal with that downward push and kind of what you're going to do. Eventually, this A is going to be something like this B, which is towards the end of the product life cycle. And so we're probably going to look to cut costs. Products in the decline stage still profitable, still make money off of declining products. You just don't make as much, right? Each successive period of time, you have fewer sales, you're making less money, unless you cut costs faster than you lose sales. If you're able to cut costs faster than you lose sales, then you can continue to make margin, still be a profitable product for you until it isn't, and then we have to divest. And we have to sell off those assets, get rid of it, find somebody else to take this product, and that'd be a good thing for us to do. C, we need to grow. We need to, this product here, it's still in the early stages. If we go back and we look at kind of where it is on the product life cycle, so it's still in this area. We're to draw a line across here. So this is the late stage of growth, and so we have to be able to get that into the mature stage. Late stages of growth means we have tons of competition. We differentiate ourselves. We do competitive advertising. We try to go directly against our chief competitors, discredit them, call them scoundrels, steal their customers, do whatever we have to do to get them out of the marketplace. That's our goal. We want to get dirty at this stage. Gloves are off. Bloodied, right, at that for seeds. C we need to fight with. D, again, early stages of the product life cycle, we're not sure exactly what it's gonna do. It's either gonna fail or it's gonna succeed. Securing early leadership positions in this product will be important. Being the leader, being the innovator, being the first one in is a key thing to be able to do with them, as with E as well. Especially with E, because E came before, in this sense, it came before D, believe it or not, in the product life cycle. It was the latest product that we offered, probably, the last one that we entered in. We're probably behaving a lot like a monopolist for this one because it's early in the product life cycle. So our goal is to control the market and to get ahead of everybody else before other competitors come in. And so this is just kind of like a snapshot, right? We've got 5 products, all of which we want to manage kind of together and succinctly. And as a brand manager or product manager, we need to think about the strategy that we would use for each one of these. Okay, we're good with this? Is this okay? Right? So the rest of the slides, I think we're going to kind of wrap this up here, but we've got some later on. I'll let you guys kind of explore this. We've got some kind of ideas where if you're early in the product life cycle, you want to be very offensive, you want to be aggressive. Later in the product life cycle, you want to be more protective and more defensive when you think of your positioning and kind of how aggressive you are relative to your competition. And there's a variety of different strategies that you can use when you're looking at that, but I think that would be good material for you guys to take a look at over this next week.